So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Good afternoon to the listening public. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know as the chairman of the People's National Movement Tobago Council that at this time, the People's basic people and understanding what is taking place. And we are out there. We are strengthening the party. To send out a call to all members of the People's National Movement who may have been in some way affected or would have fell away from the PNM. We are telling you now is the time to come back to the People's National Movement, to come home to the PNM. I even extending this call with you at this time, the Minority Leader, Brother Kelvon Morris.
Thank you, Brother Paul, and please allow us to, we are having some technical difficulties, so I'm asking for a couple minutes for us to rectify this issue, and we will be back on shortly, so please bear with us. Before I make my presentation, we just want to treat with the technical difficulties. So we'll be back on shortly. So good afternoon once again, and let me thank you for your patience. That's indeed been quite a while before. Since last I spoke with you, addressed you as minority leader. I come to you at a point where there is great concern within the education system. Took with pride because schools look forward to the July-August period where many of their issues would be treated with in a having to be in school without any supervision because they now have to wait for the maxis that come at 3 p.m. You have meals showing up, nobody to eat the meals. And this is the level of madness. This is the level of chaos. This is the level of confusion. This is the level of incompetence that now seems to be the play of day under this Secretary of Education. And I've said it, nothing personal, except for the interests of our young children, that this secretary is clearly out of her league, out of her depth, and does not have the capacity to manage this division. Let's take, for instance, technology. This division speaks of the Division of Education, Research, and Technology. Have you seen that Department of Technology operationalized even after 2 years? What about research? Where is the research element within the Division of Education? And if they were doing research, I don't think it would take them 6 months to understand how you get rid of some rats and how you treat with some moles. So clearly, at this point, I don't think the Chief Secretary needs any more evidence to treat with this secretary who clearly is unfit for the position she holds. And I also want to call out the Assistant Secretary, because you will recall this Assistant Secretary is a gentleman who also served as a former tutor rep. And this gentleman, when he was a former tutor rep, had a lot to say about the working conditions that teachers had to endure at the time. He had a lot to say about the education system. But here it is. We are in a situation where school, you would have had the July-August period to repair schools, and students are turning up to schools and are being returned to their homes because the schools aren't prepared to, and the schools are not in proper and safe condition to accommodate them. And therefore, I'm asking Orlando, the Assistant Secretary of Education, are you the same person who had all those things to say in the past? And how do you feel as a former teacher, seeing your colleagues having to endure the conditions to which you complained before? Now that you have a chance, remember, these are the people who told us that they could fix it. But as far as I see it, all they are doing is mashing it up. So, Chief Secretary, I'm humbly asking you, on behalf of the children, on behalf of the parents, on behalf of the teachers, on behalf of Tobago, please, please, Chief Secretary, we are begging you, fix this. And fix this doesn't only affect the student, it doesn't only affect the parent, but we are talking about caterers, because when you have these schools being shut down for an extended period of time, it means that the service providers, such as the caterers, who would have made the investment, who depend on feeding these students for an income, they too are affected. We are talking about the maxi taxi drivers who ply their trade with the PTSC and who provide transportation service. They would have made investment purchasing these buses and maxis, and they too depend on us having a functional education system. So there's a ripple effect on the economy. There's a ripple effect on Tobago when we have a Secretary of Education falling down on the job. Then we have a school repair program in disrepair, flouted with mismanagement, and therefore we have our children fundamentally suffering because of the incompetence of others. This is a system where we have seen a decline post-pandemic in the performance of our students, and therefore I think this is a matter that needs urgent attention. Another matter I want to treat with, and I found it quite interesting, is an RFP I saw in the papers sometime this week on social media, where EIDCOT has put into the public space an RFP for an operator of the Manta Lodge. And I would tell you why I became very concerned. I became concerned for two reasons. Because I recall, under the previous administration, in operationalizing and refurbishing Manta Lodge, there was a clear plan of collaboration between proven hotel operators in Trinidad to lend their expertise to this new hotel in Tobago so that there would be cross-marketing benefits. And the plan I speak to is that there's no secret that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is in the business of hotel management. There are two special purpose companies with the requisite capacity that treat with hotel management. We have ETEC that treats with both the management of with the management and operationalization of the Hilton Hotel and the Magdalena Grand here in Tobago, and we have UDICOT, which manages the Hyatt Hotel in Trinidad. And therefore, the plan was to utilize one or both of these two entities and collaborate so that they would lend their expertise to Manta Lodge, and therefore we would be able to benefit from the booking of these international hotel operators, Hyatt. We would have been able to benefit from the marketing. We would have been able now to sell Manta Lodge in collaboration with Hyatt. So if a business person comes to Trinidad, he can also book an extra day to come across to Tobago, go diving up at Speyside, and we would have seen the positive benefits of that collaboration, and it would have also been a cost reduction on the Tobago House of Assembly. However, this administration, for some reason, they do not believe in collaboration. They do not understand the benefits of working in partnership. And because they do not like this current central government administration, they have decided to throw that plan completely out the door. But more than throwing the plan completely out the door, what they have also done is create an approach that can, in the long run, become a cost burden on Tobago. And let me explain. You see, when you engage an operator, usually that operator, whether you make a profit or a loss, you have to pay that operator to manage your property. So whether the property is selling room nights or no one is staying there, that operator will continue to be paid. And therefore, in a situation where you have a small property as Manta Lodge, the question is whether the best approach is to hire an operator or whether it would have been better to have the collaboration, have the partnership where perhaps you only pay a manager on the property and then you have the relationship with Hyatt or with Hilton. And so the people of Tobago benefit, the people of Trinidad and Tobago benefit, and we all can say that we have made an investment that redounds to the best interests of the people of Tobago. However, this is not the situation with this arrangement. This approach is one that you are now putting in the hands of an entity, EIDCOT, that has absolutely no experience in hotel management. They do not have the requisite skill set, the requisite technical expertise. And the question has to also be, who will be evaluating the bids? Because if you have a state enterprise that do not have the capacity, do not have the skill sets, do not have anybody with hotel management experience, then how are you going to properly evaluate the bids to which you receive? And therefore, my concern continues to be with this administration. You have a bunch of people who absolutely don't know, but is pretending that they know. And it is for that reason they are taking Tobago down a place of dangerous pathways. And case in point, I want to raise this issue which I consider scandalous, vexing, disappointing, and a complete waste of Tobagonians' money. And somebody must be held accountable. Because you would recall this administration as one of their key horse that they beat from country to tongue. One of the main issues of their campaign in 2021 was something called a zip line, where about $3 million or so contract was awarded to a company to produce something that would have added value to the Tobago experience, the Tobago tourism product. However, that company failed to deliver fully on that project, and that matter is now in the court. But that matter was raised as a matter of serious concern for Tobagonians. And in fact, we saw where both the political leader of the PDP at the time and the chief secretary, current chief secretary now, would have tied themselves to ropes, and they walked all over Tobago with those ropes and telling you that that money was wasted, money was stolen. But here we are in a situation where we went to the House, asked a question to the relevant line secretary about a building in Trinidad. The secretary pretended that she knew nothing about that building in Trinidad, trying to put it on the public servant, telling us to ask the people at public administration, when those persons had nothing, absolutely nothing with that decision. And only to come to find out that this current administration took $2 million of Tobagonians' money, took it to Trinidad, rented a building, had no one in the building for over 1 year. That to me requires somebody must be held accountable. We cannot just sit down and say, well, that is small thing. That is $2 million where you have people on the block hoping to get a little CPEP, hoping to get a little URP. People who are going to the divisions. Up to this morning, I have people calling me about food card. They can't get grocery. They can't get books. They can't get bags. But this administration took $2 million, spent it on a building that not one Tobagonian benefited from. And at the end of the day, they are the same ones want to tell you Tobagonians that they love all you. And when they come to tell you they love all you have to ask them, where with $2 million gone? Because up to now, they have not told us who owns the building. They have not told us what was the real terms of this engagement. And we have to ask the question, if not you, the Tobagonian, benefited, then who? If not you, the Tobagonian, benefited, then who really benefited from that $2 million? And just how they believe that people should have lost their term of office for the zip line. I am saying to you, Tobagonians, we must not forget that $2 million that went down in the drain. When you have so many people in Tobago hungry, so many people in Tobago losing their jobs, and you have taken $2 million and just spirited it away, and you're behaving like it's no big deal. The secretary, the deputy chief secretary, and I am reviewing whether there's a case that the deputy chief secretary misled the House, because that question was asked pointedly, and she, being the relevant line secretary, ought to have known, should have known, that they would have rented a building that no one occupied for $2 million. Another matter of great concern with as I conclude and I wrap up is the spirit of collaboration in Tobago. As a minority and as PNM, we have continued to be very responsible about our duty to Tobagonians, and we have said in everything what is good for Tobago, we'll continue to work with this administration, and where there are issues, we will be there raising our voices. And therefore, as an area representative from time to time, and as minority leader as well, I will write to the Chief Secretary on matters I believe requires our dual input, requires some collaboration, requires some discussion. Case in point, I wrote on a matter regarding the Uptown Fascinators, where they came to me because they went to the office of the Chief Secretary seeking to get some kind of state property where they can build up and tent. And we know Uptown Fascinators is one of Tobago's premier small bands. I wrote to the Chief Secretary. Up to today, I've not had even the courtesy of an acknowledgement. Quite recently, the Village Council, the Swamp Village Council, raised the matter of me of this WIM multipurpose facility, which was a facility earmarked to provide skills training for the young men and women in women environs. And because we know of the challenges of that era, that skills facility is something that is required urgently. The information I receive is that the contractor would have, the project is about 95% completed, but the contractor is owed some funds and decided that he can no longer carry on the project because he's at that stage where he cannot carry on for any longer. So I saw that as an urgent matter. I wrote to the Chief Secretary in the capacity as a representative. The Chief Secretary saw me on the corridors of the stadium at Brian Lara, and he stopped me. He indicated that he received the correspondent, and we would meet, which would have been last week, Wednesday or Thursday. Last week, Wednesday, Thursday came and went, and up to this time that I speak to you, the Chief Secretary and his office didn't even have the courtesy to acknowledge my letter in an official capacity, nor even the courtesy to tell me, well, the meeting is on, the meeting is off. We have tried to inquire, and up to this point, we have not even gotten as much as a phone call. And I'm not asking for friends. I'm not asking for a conversation for conversation's sake. As one person said, I'm not looking for friends, but I'm looking up for the interests of the people I was elected to represent in the first instance, and the interests of Tobagonians. And therefore, on matters that require us to speak, I would continue to write to him. But clearly, this is a Chief Secretary who perhaps doesn't want to speak to the minority leader on matters that are important to Tobagonians. But clearly, this is a Chief Secretary that is a dictator and just wants to do his things his way and only by his book. And this is something that I'm very concerned about, because we remain committed to collaborate where there are opportunities to collaborate, so that when you hear them bandying about that this People's National Movement is not pro-Tobagonian or is not about Tobago, just know that we continue to do the relevant to meet your interests. And finally, I really want to just quickly highlight that this administration that promised so much about transparency, we have just ended the last legislative term in the Tobago House of Assembly. And I think I've done the research, and it may go down as the period or the administration with the most unanswered questions in the history of the Assembly. Over 10 to 12 written questions for answers are still awaiting answers. And these questions are questions we are asking on behalf of the people of Tobago. These are questions about hiring practices. These are questions because, and as I raise hiring practices, information is coming to me that in the Division of Tourism, where we have challenges attracting international tourism, and where I asked a question previously about the technical expertise and the strategic plan for tourism, and we were told that they are waiting to hire people with the technical capacity. I am hearing a physiotherapist, someone who has training in biology, is now a technical advisor in the division of tourism. If you're talking about square pegs in round hole, that is about the best example you could find. No better example than a physiotherapist now trying to bring, I don't know, well, probably must be looking to bring athletes or something to the island, because I don't know what kind of technical advice could a physiotherapist advise a secretary who seems so lacking about moving our tourism trust in a positive direction. So on those matters, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I now turn you over to our political leader of the Tobago Council of the PNM, Deputy Political Leader of the People's National Movement National, the one and only, our infatigable leader, Mr. Ansel Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minority Leader, Assemblyman Kelvon Morris. Let me also acknowledge the opening bowler or the opening batsman for this press conference, as we are in the season of cricket. Our hard-working chairman of the PNM Tobago Council, Mr. Larry Paul. Today I'm in a good mood. TKR won last night very convincingly. And I'm looking forward to Guyana, Amazon Warriors losing tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to TKR defeating Jamaica in the finals. While I'm in a good mood because of cricket and, generally other things, I'm also in a bad mood because of some of the recent developments here in Tobago. More specifically this time around, the matter of TADCO, the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, which was, of course, the brainchild and the vision of the People's National Movement back in 2020. And I want to say that what has transpired with TADCO and the contract workers is simply a continuation of a war that is being waged against contract workers in Tobago by this THA Farley-led administration. And I want to signal to all of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago, first and foremost, that we in the PNM, we will not sit idly by and allow this war and this effort to terrorize, victimize, and damage Tobagonians, especially in this case, contract workers in the Tobago House of Assembly and affiliated companies. We are going to take all steps and all actions, legal actions, to ensure that the perpetrators of this kind of wickedness and spite against Tobagonians will feel the brunt of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. So we have already reported some matters to the Integrity Commission. We are in the process of receiving legal advice on whether or not we can take some of these matters to the Equal Opportunities Commission. And as I speak now, some matters are on their way to the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. So Tobagonians, stay tuned. Very soon, you are going to see the PNM's active response to this kind of wickedness taking place in Tobago. And when I say very soon, please do not associate my soon to the Chief Secretary's soon, because we are learning over the past couple years that when this Chief Secretary says soon, it is either years later, months later, or perhaps never. I recall almost 2 years ago, this Chief Secretary indicated that there was going to be a reshuffle of his executive. He indicated that he did not believe the performance of the executive was up to standard. And he said to Liz Williams and other reporters, you will hear about that reshuffle soon. Soon in that case is yet to arrive. Ex gratia payments, that was a pillar of the Tobago House of Assembly election campaign, one of the main pillars. That promise was made to Tobagonians way in advance of the election, probably about 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the elections. It was promised for Christmas of 2021, which was right after the election. The Chief Secretary indicated that there were some challenges, but they were well on their way to paying that ex gratia money by Christmas of 2022. When Christmas came in 2022, he said the ex gratia will be paid soon, and public servants received the necessary instructions, the money was there, and all was in place to pay the ex gratia soon. Soon ain't come yet. When the Manta Lodge Hotel was handed over, at that grand ceremony with the cutting of the ribbons, the Chief Secretary indicated that an RFP will go out soon and the hotel will be opened and fully operational. Again, the word used was soon. 6 months down the road, we are now seeing a very flawed RFP being placed into the public domain. So when I say soon, please do not associate the meaning of soon with the Chief Secretary's actions of the past. So let's talk about TADCO, and this evening I want to spend some time really teaching and edifying the people of Tobago. I'm going to take my time. I will try not to go beyond half an hour, because I really want Tobagonians, especially those employed on contract in the THA, to have a clearer understanding of your rights, to have a clearer understanding of how contract employment is supposed to work for you, and to remind all of you of how things were compared to how they are now. And one of the most unfortunate things that has transpired is that banks and financial institutions no longer value employment contracts and even work contracts coming from the Tobago House of Assembly. And that development falls squarely on the shoulders of the Chief Secretary himself. In terms of work contracts, contracts to do projects, especially in the construction sector, they have refused to honor those contracts as it relates to specific contractors who they wish to destroy for whatever reason. And the banks have now adopted a position that any contract given to any company from the Tobago House of Assembly, they are simply not going to fund it. They are not going to give any loans based on that, because due to the actions of this Chief Secretary, the banks now have no guarantee that the contractor will be paid and be in a position to service the loan. when it comes to employment contracts, one of the hallmark achievements of my tenure as Chief Secretary was when the PNM took a decision to standardize 3-year contracts to bring some predictability and some stability to this whole thing of contract employment. And even during that period and before, the banks were pretty confident that if somebody had a contract that in accordance with proper and good industrial relations practices, then that contract guaranteed some level of stability as long as the person performed their duties satisfactorily and as long as the person was interested in continuous employment, that the contract will be renewed. So contract renewal was automatic under the PNM. We standardized it at 3 years and it was automatic. As long as you performed well and as long as you wished to continue to work in the position, your renewal was almost, not even almost, it was in fact automatic. Due to the actions of this administration, that obviously has changed, and therefore the banks are now convinced that even when you come for a loan with your contract, that there are no guarantees that you are going to have a job the day after you take that loan. And that is the real development. So a number of contract workers who may not have suffered as yet, and I'm saying as yet because we don't know who will be next, right? First, we had monitoring and evaluation unit, we had community partnership unit, we had persons in URP, we had persons in CPEP, we now have TADCO workers, and there are some other sporadic cases happening across divisions because this new bunch of politicians believe that they have a right to not renew a contract without any justifiable reason when that contract comes before them for renewal. And therefore, I want to take my time and explain certain things. The first thing I want to explain, I want to deal with TADCO firstly, and then I will come to a brief law session. I'm not a lawyer, but still I want to take the opportunity to educate and edify Tobagonians on the issue of labor law. And not just Tobagonians, but even the politicians who seem to have zero regard and zero respect and perhaps zero understanding of proper industrial relations practices and the labor laws of this country. I will use the last part of my press conference to keep a very short, brief, educational session for free. So tell the members of this current executive for the first time they should tune in to a PNM press conference. But let's talk about TADCO. The PNM at one point in time had in operation 3 companies in the THA. We had the Cassava Company, we had the Tobago Cold Storage and Warehouse Company, which we know as Tico Suave, and we also had the Fish Processing Company, which was FIPCOT. All those companies were started given specific responsibilities, specific business plans, specific mandates to achieve certain objectives on behalf of the people of Tobago, specific to the agricultural or the food production sector. Over a few years, we realized that perhaps we could get more value, more efficiency, more effectiveness towards the achievement of these objectives if we were to bring these companies, dissolve them as a matter of fact, and formulate them into one single entity. The research was done. We had a consultant who looked at the situation for us, and therefore we went along a path of dissolving Tico Suave, Cassava Company, Fish Processing Company, and we formed TADCO, the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company. But all those companies had staff members. And the question arose, what should be done with the members of staff, especially in relation to the labor laws, in relation to following proper industrial relations practices, and more importantly, in relation to genuine humanity, empathy, sympathy, and an understanding and sensitivity of the need for human beings in Tobago to have access to employment and continued employment. And therefore, we took a decision that during that restructuring, nobody, not one person who was interested in continuing to work would have been sent home. And the PNM, we were able to do that successfully in the year 2020. Of course, there were some teething challenges, there were some issues, and in any situation where you're trying to transition or change the status quo, there are going to be challenges to be resolved. But notwithstanding the challenges, we were able to merge these three companies into one company, preserving all jobs. And this morning I heard the out-of-depth chairman of TADCO talking about issues relating to differences in salaries and all that kind of thing. Firstly, we tried as best as possible to preserve the salary packages of all the workers. So if you left fish company and you were working for $8,000 a month, we tried to fit you into TADCO working for at least the same $8,000 a month. If you came from Tico Suave working for a particular salary, let's say $10,000 a month, we looked at the structure of TADCO and tried to fit you into TADCO for a salary around that range. The other issue or non-issue he raised this morning had to do with persons in the same positions working for different salaries. Somebody tell that gentleman, please, that across both the public sector and the private sector, you have specific ranges when it comes to positions. And each particular range will have a salary band, right? It will have the lower end of the band and it will have the higher end. So let's say you have range 4, for example, and the salary range is $8,000 to $10,000. Chances are somebody coming into that position or that range for the first time new, they will have a salary at the lower end of the range. Somebody who has been there for some time, maybe for 5 years, 6 years, more experience, or maybe a higher level of qualification, their salary might be a little bit higher than the lower end of the range. And that is standard practice across both the public sector and the private sector. So all those things that he is trying to make into issues in trying to explain their wicked actions, those are actually not issues at all. Now, TADCO at this point in time have a lot of issues, but those issues described by the chairman this morning on Channel 5 and Tobago Updates, those are not the issues that TADCO have. And I will tell you of some of the issues of TADCO shortly. So, bring up the first document. There is a letter. I'm not busting files yet. This is a letter that I want to show the people of Tobago, because it is now standard practice in the PNM that before we make assertions or allegations, we produce the evidence. And this is simply the very first letter. I will not read all of it in the interest of time. This is the letter that was issued by Tico Suave to one of its employees concerning the transition to TADCO. And every staff member across the various 3 companies would have gotten a similar letter. And I will simply read the last part of the letter, because the first part basically says, we're winding down this company, we're transitioning into one company, and therefore this company that you're now working for will be closed effective a particular date. I will read the last paragraph. Finally, please be advised that the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company will retain your services effective 1st October 2020, and you will receive further communication from the company prior to that date. So persons were informed that yes, we're closing cassava company, we're closing fish processing company, we're closing Tico Suave, but guess what? You're staying right here. We will re-employ you in the new company. You will continue to have employment. You will continue to contribute to Tobago's development, etc., etc. So persons were guaranteed that they were not going to lose any benefits, any jobs, any service, or anything of the sort. Right? And that was the PNM's policy. Next document. Next one. Well, that's the signature of the. Right. So, before I get to that, I will come back to that. You could enlarge my screen now. I will come back to that. So, we gave all the employees the commitment that they were going to be re-engaged. Because as I said, the policy of the PNM was that even if we were restructuring, it was possible to restructure without sending home anybody. Contrary to what this wicked, vindictive administration is doing. So they closed down monitoring and evaluation unit completely, sent home everybody. They closed down the community partnership unit completely. But of course, they secretly rehired certain persons. I will tell all you about that next time. Right? CPEP now, they come to talk about the restructuring. Close down CPEP completely. Promise the CPEP people. Reapply. And you will get reemployed. We will fit you in. And those who don't get fit into CPEP, we will fit you into other areas within the Tobago House of Assembly. I want Tobagonians and I want the media to go and contact some of those same CPEP people who were wickedly dismissed and find out how many of them were either re-engaged in CPEP or re-engaged in any other division or any other entity in the Tobago House of Assembly. And I can tell you now that the number does not cross 5 persons out of the 20-something. So they are now trying the same thing with TADCO, sending home 60+ persons. And you have in this arrangement, reapply. I am saying to those TADCO employees now, a promise is only a comfort to a fool. Right? So just as they did with CPEP, judge people and their character by their track record. So they said to CPEP the same thing, only 4 out of 24. And I'm saying in the case of TADCO, not many, I would not give a number, but we ought not to expect that many persons will be re-engaged after this so-called restructuring. And I want to rephrase it and call it an illegal and callous restructuring. All right? So, as I said before, TADCO has several problems. TADCO has lost its bearings. TADCO has strayed from its mandate. But guess what? The 60-odd employees that they just terminated, they are not to blame. The people that have to take responsibility for the fortunes of TADCO at this point in time are the members of the Executive Council, especially the Secretary with responsibility, Natisha Charles Pantin, the Chairman of the Board, Mr. Ricardo Alfred, and the rest of the board. Those are the individuals that took certain decisions that have stymied the growth of this company. In the first place, as part of the great plans the PNM had for agriculture, We started a facility up at Goldsboro, which is supposed to be an agro-processing facility. We spent $2 million on the building and a further $4 million to import state-of-the-art equipment from China. I think the equipment came from. To date, they have refused to continue the work on the building. They have the equipment sitting down somewhere in Shore Park. I hear they're trying to give it away to one of their friends. I will tell you all more about that soon, on another date and at another time. That facility would have been a key revenue generator and a key transformer of the agriculture sector here in Tobago. They refused blatantly to continue that project. But you know what they did? They developed friends in Trinidad. So they gone down to Trinidad, went to some place where a company by the name of Novo operates, brought Novo to Tobago, signed an MOU with Novo to pay them $200,000 per month to bring produce from Trinidad that we have right here in Tobago. And the same thing they were paying Novo $200,000 per month to do is the same exact thing that the facility was established for in the first place. So you have the government facility started under the PNM, up in Goldsboro, overrun with bush. You have the equipment down in Shore Park, doing absolutely nothing, and I'm hoping that they're storing it well in good condition so that the equipment will not be totally broken by the time the PNM get back into office and we're ready to move ahead with that very important project. I hope that they are storing it in good condition. So they discontinued that. Gone down to Trinidad to bring up Novo. They are currently owing Novo over $1 million that they are unable to pay. But you want to blame the staff, and your big excuse is that the wage bill is too high and TADCO is not making money. TADCO will not make money if you do not engage in the projects that were supposed to be key revenue generators for that company. Right? So they're owing Novo and cannot pay. As a result of that, my information is that Novo has discontinued the arrangement, and it leads me now to the contract farming. Again, they went to Trinidad, met up with another company called Nutramix, and they had this bright idea that Tobagonians should get involved in contract farming. So they get in the chickens and the feed from that company, they bring it to Tobago, they distribute it to the farmers, and the farmers will rear these chickens and sell it back to TADCO at, I think, $15 per pound. I had a discussion with one of the persons involved in this contract farming, and you know what they said to me? That the project makes absolutely no sense, especially for individuals who were already involved in poultry production. Because when they crunched the numbers, that individual was only making something like $2,000 per month in profit. When they take into consideration how much they were getting from TADCO when they sold them the chickens, how much they have to pay back for the food, for the feed, and the chickens, the profit was working out to less than $3,000 per month for that individual. So that individual who had the capacity to be a poultry farmer, instead of getting support from the THA, maybe a piece of land, like the lands we were attempting to distribute in Belmont Road, to expand their poultry operations and putting the infrastructure in place so that we could have mass slaughtering and processing facilities for chickens, which is exactly what we were about before we were voted out of office by the people of Tobago. So instead of doing that, you come now, we're saying to the farmers, forget your business. Put your business aside. Rear chickens, we will take them from you, label them TADCO, and sell them at a loss, while you, the farmer, is only making $2,000 to $3,000 per month, if so much. So a lot of the farmers are very concerned with that arrangement. So instead of us supporting and developing poultry farmers on the island, we are saying to them effectively, work for TADCO. Put your energies into working for TADCO. And guess what? Having amassed a significant amount of chickens, they got to the point where they started selling the chickens, I think it's for $120 or something like that. So they started to give away the chicken. But with all the chicken they give away, there are approximately 30,000 chickens down at the compound in TADCO that has been condemned as dog food because of the poor quality of the chickens. And that is the situation. 30,000 chickens. How much for a chicken, Kelvin? $45 for a chicken. 30,000 by 45. That is a loss of $1.3 million alone through that arrangement. And on top of that, as I said before, when TADCO through this contract farming arrangement crunched the numbers, they are operating at a loss. In other words, the only people really benefiting from the contract farming are the producers of the chicken and the feed, which is a company from Trinidad. So it is the same modus operandi. Support companies from Trinidad. Support your friends from Trinidad at the expense of TADCO as a company and an entity, and at the expense of Tobagonians. And that is what is happening in TADCO. So you start your contract farming. I am told as well that all kinds of people advised the secretary, because just now they're getting ready to blame the CEO. Don't blame the CEO. The contract farming idea was an idea between the secretary of the division and the chairman. So against the best advice of people who knew better, they were adamant that contract farming is the way to go. Tell farmers, put away their poultry business, produce chickens for TADCO. So in other words, they are actually employing farmers to produce chickens on behalf of TADCO, when we should be asking farmers, expand your own business, produce more, label it as your company. Like we have this wonderful producer of chicken up at Mount St. George there, Mr. O. We have another lady down in Canby, Miss Carrington, and several others. So instead of telling them expand, take land, expand, produce more, move from 500 birds to 5,000 birds, you're saying to them, no, close down your business, take 200 birds from Nutrimix, rear that for a few months, take a small money, and we go take it from you, and pile it up down in a fridge in TADCO, and a few months later, we will use it as dog food because all spoil and they fail to sell them off. That is what is happening at TADCO. And you want to blame the staff for that? You want to talk about restructuring because of that? That is not an issue of the staff. That is an issue of poor policy decisions. And I want to say a word before poor, but I will not use that word here. Poor policy decisions by the Executive Council, the Secretary, and Mr. Alfred and his board. That is what has TADCO in the state that it is in. In addition to that, there's another scandalous situation taking place as we speak. Take me back to that document. Now, of course, one of the ways that this company generates money is through the rental of space down at Shaw Park, for everybody who is familiar with the operations at Shaw Park. The typical rate for space down there, as you will see on that document, is $5.25 per square foot. That is the rate, Mr. Paul? That is the correct rate. So this invoice, let us call it Company A. Company A is renting at $5.25 per square foot a certain amount of space. And the space here This is the one with 15,880 square feet. Yes. Right? $93,791.25 per month. And by the way, this information was provided to me by a whistleblower. Whistleblowing is key, because if it wasn't for the whistleblower, Tobagonians will not know about this. They will not know that thousands of chickens that were produced utilizing mostly taxpayers' money are down there spoiling and designated as dog food because it is unfit for human consumption. But back to this. So, let's call this company Company A. 15,880 square feet, which is perhaps an entire bay, at $5.25 per square foot. $83,370 plus VAT will take it to $93,791.25. This is back in 2018, right? No problems there. The rate is $5.25. Next. So let's call this company Company B. Again, 2018, this time 4,576, that's the square feet that this company is accessing at a rate of $5.25 per square foot. And the total there is $24,024. And when you add VAT, the total is $27,027 per month. All right? Rate. Fair rate, $5.25 per square foot. Give me the next one. This is where the trouble is. So here we have another company. And this company, in case you're guessing, is from Trinidad. And this company, according to this invoice, is accessing 550 square feet at a rate of $10 per square feet, and the rental cost is $5,500 per month, and when you add VAT, the total is $6,187.50 per month. Tobagonians, what if I told you that my information is that this invoice does not represent the accurate amount of space occupied by this particular company? What if I told you that my information is that this company is actually occupying closer to 10,000 square feet of space at Tadco's compound? What if I also told you that my information is that for the 9,000 something square feet that this company is paying according to this invoice, $6,187.50 per month. The correct payment, because if you work it out at the correct rate at $5.25 per square foot, the correct payment for that kind of space will actually be approximately $52,000 per month. And therefore, this company, for whatever reason, for reasons unknown to me, I can't tell you why, that company is benefiting from a discount of $46,000 per month. And if you multiply that by the fact that this company has been there, I am told, since around January, that is a loss of some $276,000 thus far. So you throw away $1.3 million in chicken. You owe Novo $1 million or more for bringing food from Trinidad that we could have gotten here. That money would have gone into the pockets of Tobagonians. Like my good friend in Goldsboro there, Murray and Sharp and them in Lansome, those good farmers, that money would have gone into their pockets. And if that was not enough, you here giving away our rental space at a discounted rate, a rate discounted by $46,000 per month. And that will amount to a loss of over $500,000, exactly $552,000 thereabout per year. I am told as well that that company has managed to lock in a 3-year contract, and therefore locking in a 3-year contract at that rate will eventually amount to a loss of about $1.7 million through this arrangement alone. I am calling on the Secretary of the Division, firstly, Ms. Natisha Charles Pantin, the division that TADCO reports to. I am calling on the Chairman of the Board of TADCO, Mr. Ricardo Alfred, and the rest of the board members to explain this. How is it? I ain't asking the company nothing. The company is a business, and if I'm in business and I get in a nice discount, I'm taking it too. If I go in a store and a store want to sell me an iPhone for $1,000, as long as it's working good and it looking new and it untampered with, I am taking the discount too. I am asking the chairman, the secretary, and the rest of the board to explain to us how did this company get a discount in rental rate of $1.7 million over a 3-year period. That is one. I am also asking them to explain why is it that the invoices being produced appears to be tampered with. Well, not even tampered with, falsified. Because in the first place, there is no way that company could be occupying 550 square feet. Absolutely no way. Go around there and go into the business place and you will see how much space they're occupying. And secondly, how you arrive at $10 per square foot when the rate is actually $5.25. So in other words, you just decide you will put in a figure and put in a price per square foot to come up with the monthly arrangement that you want. The secretary, the chairman of the board, and the rest of the board must explain what transpired here. We want to know how this company came to benefit from such huge discount, especially from a company called TADCO that the chairman himself is admitting is in financial distress. So you're in financial distress, but the information given to me is that you offering big discounts. And nobody else is benefiting from this discount. Because one of the questions I asked, you're sure this wasn't some special sale? Because I know they had chicken sale. You're sure this wasn't some space sale? The whistleblower said, no, this is the only company benefiting from that arrangement. And they must explain why. Also, why we ended up in a situation where $1.3 million in chicken had to be condemned as dog food because of your big foolish dream of contract farming. Before you continue what we started in Belmont Road, you know what we were going to do? We were going to develop the lands in Belmont Road. We had earmarked, I think, 7 of the farmers earmarked there. I think it's probably 30-something in all that were earmarked. 7 of them were going to be producers of chickens, broiler farmers. And you may have had some doing layers as well. And we're going to establish right there, we had designated a space to have a processing facility for chickens, and I think there was going to be possibly an abattoir as well. I can't remember all the details, but definitely a processing facility for chickens was on the cards. Instead of doing that and putting our farmers to work to produce more, and if perhaps the farmers have a surplus that they can't get off their hands, that they can't get off at the supermarkets, then perhaps TADCO could have come into the picture, as we would have been doing over the years, and take some of the branded produce from these farmers. But no, you want to go into contract farming because somebody tell you that is a good initiative. A few moments later, 30,000 chickens, valued at over $1.3 million, going to be dog food. My dog does eat chow. All right? So that is 1.3 million plus $1.7 million. That is what, $3 million? And then you add to that all the other things that we don't know about. But your problem, your big problem in Tadco is the 60-odd staff that you chose to dismiss because your wage bill too high. No, Mr. Alfred, no, Miss Pantin, the wage bill is not too high. Mismanagement is too high. Corruption is too high. And your consideration of friends and family, that is what is too high in Tadco. Bring up the next document.
How would you allay the fears of individuals who are currently employed on contract under the present administration if they decide to choose the PDP as their party of choice? Now let me tell you something, You don't have to fear the PNM losing election, Because one of the things I will do as Chief Secretary is ensure that you don't lose your job because a PNM person will give you a contract. That's not how it's going to work with me at all. You are Tobagonian first and foremost. And on an island with 60,000 or less people, we don't have enough people to actually live on the island and do the kind of work we want to do on the island. So it makes no sense alienating people.
So this was the Chief Secretary, the Honorable Farley Chavez Augustine, before he became Chief Secretary. Tobagonians don't have to fear. I will not alienate anybody. Contract workers do not have to fear for their jobs. Now let me show you Farley Augustine as Chief Secretary. This time he was not in the barber shop. He was sitting behind a desk typing a letter. Show us that letter. A memo, sorry. And I'm going to read this for you. Because it's either somebody have absolutely no clue of industrial relations and how it works, and I could understand that because the boy is no lawyer and he's no HR expert. But here was he issuing a memo to the chief administrator, the senior state council, all administrators of the Tobago House of Assembly, and his favorite assistant secretary, the assistant secretary in the office of the chief secretary, Miss Sertica Orr. And this is dated June 30th, 2022, and it says change to the request for re-engagement. And I'm going to read it for you. The executive has noticed a disturbing pattern where contracted employees are automatically re-engaged, and sometimes subsequently, secretaries are asked to grant covering approval without sufficient information be available to the line secretary. I'm reading it how it right, This is a legal malpractice as opposed to a best practice. Secretaries are not rubber stamps. Files seeking re-engagement must contain, in addition to the request for re-engagement, an updated resume and staff appraisal report. No comma in that sentence, but if I read it like that, I will run out of breath. This will ensure the line secretary is in a position to appropriately give the covering approval for re-engagement. Failing to have the required information contained within the file may result in delays, refusal to sign the covering approval by the secretary, or an outright denial. an outright denial of such approval. It should be noted that renewal of contracts is not automatic. Additionally, as per Act 40 of 1996, only the executive of the THA is truly authorized to grant approval for contracts. In this regard, be warned that requests for renewal can be denied by the executive. So said, so done. I showed you all a couple weeks ago the actions of a particular secretary who, after the administrator recommended that a particular young man who had been working in the division for years, good appraisal reports, good performance, the administrator and the human resource director recommended that he be renewed. The secretary said no way and wrote on the file that the young man is to get 1 more year. Well, as a matter of fact, the contract was supposed to be ended the month after the secretary was writing in the file. So she ended the guy's arrangement almost immediately. No reason given. So in other words, contract employees, and I want you all to listen to me carefully. In other words, a secretary in this THA now believes that they can simply end your contract. No questions asked. No reason given. Just so. You could work how hard you want. You could perform how well you want. You could have how much bills you want to pay. The secretaries of this administration and the chief secretary believe that they can end your contract just like that. It happened to CPEP workers. It happened to people in URP. It happened to the monitoring and evaluation unit. It happened to people in the community partnership unit. It happened to this guy in health. It happened to somebody else in tourism. It happened to several people in works. It happened to people in the division of agriculture. It's happening everywhere, and now it reached TADCO. But for all those secretaries, ill-informed, incompetent, wicked and vindictive, who feel that contract renewal is not automatic, let's look at what the law says, because this is, of course, a book, labor law in the Commonwealth, Caribbean, the practice of good industrial relations in the 21st century, and it was written by Mrs. Deborah Thomas Felix, who is and has been for some time the president of the Industrial Court. That is the court that does deal with things like these. And in the book, and of course, the book has her opinions in it, but the book also has quotes and citings from cases, which has to now be considered case law. Because if the court ruled on a particular matter in times before, then it is considered now case law. All right? So I want to read a part of the book for you all. Contract workers, listen, know all your rights. And this part is the employment relationship, contract of service versus contract for service. In the world of work, employment is characterized either by a contract of service or a contract for service. On the one hand, persons who are employed under a contract of service are considered to be employed for an indeterminable or indefinite period, and they are regarded as permanent workers. Let me read that again. On the one hand, persons who are employed under a contract of service, which applies to all the contracts that the THA issues to its employees, TADCO workers, CPEP workers, teachers, doctors, nurses, all contract employees. Contract of service. On the one hand, persons who are employed under a contract of service are considered to be employed for an indeterminable or indefinite period, and they are regarded as permanent workers. Farley don't think so. Ricardo Alfred don't think so. The TADCO board doesn't think so. And this entire administration does not think so. And of course, when this thing with TADCO came out, I saw they sent out their supporters. I will not call them minions for the purpose of this press conference. But I saw they sent out their performance, and people out there saying a contract is a contract. And when your contract ends, your contract ends. And if the contract ends, they could send you home. Absolutely rubbish. This is what the law is saying. Contracts of service can be expressed or implied. They can be oral or in writing. A main feature of a contract of service is that the workers are controlled by their employers in the sense that they must perform the task they are instructed to do. They are expected to report to work at a specific place during specific hours and on specific days. Moreover, they have the right to certain leave, vacation, sick, injury, maternity, and paternity, and they can enjoy additional benefits such as traveling, study leave, etc. Many of these workers maintain an employment relationship with their employers for a number of years, some until retirement. This is so particularly for those workers who are employed in the public sector and with the protective services. I want to read that last sentence again. This is so particularly for those workers who are employed in the public sector and with the protective services. The other part of the book I want to read is on page 61, where it speaks about the principles of good industrial relations. The principles of good industrial relations practice dictate that no worker's employment may be terminated except for a valid reason connected with his capacity to perform the work which he was employed or which is founded on the operational requirements of an employer's business. Let me read it again slowly. The principles of good industrial relations practice dictate that no worker's employment may be terminated except for a valid reason connected with his capacity to perform the work which he was employed or which is founded on the operational requirements of an employer's business. In other words, you can't just get up on the wrong side of the bed and decide you want to fire people. So the workers at TADCO received this letter. Can we have that letter, please? And again, I want to read this. I'm reading a lot today, but please bear with me. It is absolutely necessary. And this is the CEO writing. But the CEO cannot and will not issue a letter like this without the approval of the board, or these days it's not even the board, it could be the chairman, for all you know. And also the chairman or the board will not act in this way without the blessing of at least their secretary or the executive council. So the CEO in this case is simply the rubber stamp. The Board of Directors and Executive Management of the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company Limited, TADCO, wish to thank you for your services rendered during your contractual period 1st October 2020 to 30th September 2023. The company's vision and mission are paramount, as it astutely seeks to develop agribusiness through collaboration and various projects geared towards capacity development and ensuring the island's food security and contribution to GDP. During your tenure at the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, your contributions would have allowed for the development and growth of the company. So let me pause there for a bit. So your contributions would have allowed for the development and the growth of the company, yet you're sending them home and telling them to reapply? Let me continue. Noteworthy, you would have assisted in the company's transition subsequent to the amalgamation of the 3 previous entities. We wish you best of luck in your future endeavors and thank you sincerely for your commitment during your tenure. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what you call a dismissal letter. They could call it what they want. They could call it a thank you letter. It is in fact a dismissal letter. So here we have a situation. 60-odd persons at TADCO, following others who it happened to, got up one morning and were told that, look, you have to reapply for your position. That was the first signal. No idea of the positions, no advertisement, nothing, no information on any new structure within the company. You have to reapply. And of course, we know based on their previous behavior, reapply mean we pick in a few to save face, and the rest of you will be outside on the pavement somewhere looking for work. That is what reapply means. So having gotten a contract, some of you would have gone to the bank, hopefully based on that contract, notwithstanding what is happening now with the treatment of contract workers by this administration. You went to the bank, you got loans, you exposed yourself to other commitments, and you are now being told, reapply. I can imagine how those employees feel. You expect, based on your qualifications, based on your commitment, based on your contributions to TADCO, some of you over many years in the previous companies, you expect that your constitutional right to continuous employment and to the enjoyment of your benefits derived from your hard work, you expect that that will be respected and honored by your employers. And suddenly you have found yourselves in great distress, wondering if to reapply, when to reapply, which positions will be available for you to reapply for, and most importantly, will your reapplication even be successful? I could only imagine the stress that these persons are going through. We sympathize with them, we empathize with them, but at the same time, I want to encourage them to stand firm and stand strong. And I want to say to all contract workers, and as a matter of fact, I'm saying it to all Tobagonians, because our mantra here in Tobago should be, if you touch one, you touch all. And it cannot be a situation where, as a Tobagonian, you are out there justifying because it is your party and because you supported them, 60 plus persons being placed on the breadline for absolutely no reason. Some even have the audacity to talk about poor performance when there is no evidence or no information on the performance of these individuals available. We saw in the dismissal letter where the CEO actually congratulated them and thanked them for their human service. And therefore, no Tobagonian should be happy today. You should not have been happy when it happened with CPEP. You should not have been happy when it happened with other persons in URP. And you should not be happy to see any Tobagonian placed on the breadline unfairly. And of course, by all means, if people are not performing, discipline them. If people break the rules and the laws, fire them. That is why Trevor James should have been fired. But apparently rules and laws applies to everybody in the THA except those in the Executive Council. But here we are. Yet again, persons are going through this period of uncertainty and stress because their jobs are being threatened by a group of callous, uncaring, insensitive, incompetent individuals. And I'm saying all of us must fight back. And I'm calling on all contract workers in the THA, get a copy of this book and know your rights as a contract worker. Get a lawyer on standby, and I'm saying even to the workers at TADCO. As a matter of fact, we are in the PNM. We are going to look at some options available to us to see how we can treat with this matter. Separate and apart from what I described earlier in the press conference. Because you will not sit idly by and allow this administration to continue to victimize Tobagonians, department after department, company after company, simply because they feel it is politically beneficial to them. It is wickedness, it is spiteful, and it is absolutely un-Tobagonian-like. So I'm saying to all of us as Tobagonians, continue to support one another. Yes, support your party, but do not support your party and your leaders in wrongdoing. Because what transpired with the workers at TADCO is simply wrong, unfair, and there is no way to justify the treatment of those workers. So, I will pause and I will take any questions from the members of the media at this time. So if there are no questions, I guess that means that I was very clear. So let me thank all of you for being present here. And for those of you who tuned in to this press conference, I hope you were duly informed. Do not sit back and allow these people to continue to bully Tobagonians. Do not sit back and allow them to continue to take bread from the mouths of Tobagonians. Because the final thing I will say is that there is a domino effect. You may look at it and believe, well, you are not being affected. Of course, any wise contract worker will understand that this could happen to them. Watch your secretary too hard tomorrow morning and she put your name down in the bad book. And then when administrators send up your file with raving reviews, excellent performer, always on time, goes the extra mile, secretary would say, that name ring a bell. Pull out the bad book, your name in the bad book. She write exactly the whole paragraph that Faith write. There's a domino effect. And therefore, for contract workers, the continued treatment of contract employees in this way, as I said before, has resulted in banks placing very little value now in employment contracts. Notwithstanding what the law says, the reality is that the THA is behaving in a particular way. And therefore, in times past where we had people on contract getting mortgages, that is not likely to happen now, given the current circumstances. Because the bank will feel that based on how this THA is behaving, you could be out of our work anytime. And that is the reality. You might even be permanent. and say, well, nah, this can't happen to me, I'm safe. But guess what? 60 persons on the breadline, 50 persons elsewhere, 30 persons in CPEP. The figure is probably now over 200-300. In the construction sector, contractors that used to employ 1,000+ persons, all of a sudden they have no jobs to employ anybody. So you have people within your communities, within the Tobago space, finding themselves stressed, finding themselves in difficulty, finding themselves in need. And when they exhaust their savings and they go to the Division of Social Services, no support. I'm aware of one lady waiting on a $500 food card a year and 2 months now. And that is what is happening. I'm aware of persons who are quite capable of paying their rent, taking care of themselves, back in their parents' house, because of the actions of wicked politicians on this island. We in the PNM, we're not sitting down and allow that to happen. We will act as far as the laws of Trinidad and Tobago permits us to act. Stay tuned. Have a good afternoon.